welcome. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your support and your attention to the matter. We're going to get started right away. I'm going to introduce to you one of our cohorts and leaders, both in the community and with the advocacy group, Mr. Bud Christian.
Thank you. I'd like to start tonight by explaining we put this group together over the last few months, and I want to start by having the board stand up, and I'm going to have you say your name so everybody knows who's who here, please.
Jim Wimmers. Mike Hagedorn. Jim Hagedorn. Mike Reveler. Mark Kern. Jared Vandermark. James Buffington.
Tony Canale.
I'm not on the board, but Tony Canale is speaking.
Tony's done a lot, and you'll see in a little bit. So I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We wanted to put a meeting together. We've worked a lot this summer trying to get things started so we can get some changes on the lake here. And it goes back to in May when we were as a group, about 8 of us were talking after being at a watershed meeting and seeing the confusion and the business owners and the community. We've had people talk about selling boats, property, many things that show that they were not excited about the way things were going with the weeds. So we talked and we started to meet, and after the first week we had a meeting in Cranberry the second week, and we brought together Watershed, Chamber, and a lot of the groups that were working on the lake, and to let them know that what they were doing was very hard work. They were working their butts off and doing everything they could to make the best of what we had to work with. But we realized that we weren't getting very far. We weren't going to get our lake back the way we would like to have it to get our water sports and get our summer vacation people in the lake that we're used to boating on. So we put a meeting together, and at that meeting I explained that we have been looking through the eye of a needle instead of the gamma of possibilities of what we might be doing to fix this lake. So we started to talk about the possibilities, and after that meeting we had a number of conversations, and one of them, if some people remember, we talked about mucking for a short period of time and bringing our lake back the way it was, and that would stop the weeds from growing. And the challenge of doing that would be what's called the weed, the biomass, when it deteriorates, what happens to it and what reaction and what you'd be left with to the lake. So we slowed way down on that. We came up with a chemical, and Mike Hagedorn, one of the board members, brought me this name, and I reached out to a company and started to learn about the possibilities of what's called Priscillacor. Priscillacor is a chemical that attacks milfoil, the largest one invasive weed that we have out here. And what it does is it's very selective. It's been used around the country, actually around the world. CPRO is a company that makes aquatic chemicals, the largest one in the country. They have some of the best people in the world that work on this type of projects. So we got educated to what the possibilities were. I got John Cross involved, and at the meeting that we had at Cranberry, I asked him, our state rep, I said, if we, the community, come up with ideas that make sense, that we could see a change in what we might do to get our lake back, would you get behind it? And he said, I would. So within 2 weeks, I had John in a meeting with CPRO. The day after, we had a meeting with ODNR and Aqueduct. And that's what meeting that we got 250 acres of spray from. That's where the testing came from. They did the testing, and after the testing, they came back and they were trying to decide what they're going to do, and they seem to be very gun shy of doing any treatments. I think in Ohio, and some of the things that I've learned between all these meetings, is Ohio knows aquatic fish. Aquatic plant life is not something they're as versed on as many of the other states in the country. I reached out to Indiana to a man by the name of Matt Johnson. He owns a company called Aquatic Control. In the aquatic weed maintenance program and how they take care of weeds, Matt's a person who's president of the Midwest Applicators Association and has been several terms, and on the national board for aquatic weed maintenance. He's on the national board. He has 66 employees, and he does this every day. So after talking with CPRO and learning about what we could do with these chemicals, we just tried to have more meetings and introduce the idea. We had a meeting with Matt Huffman, the president of the House Senate. I had lunch with Robert McCauley, one of our senators. They're all aware of our problem, but right now what we've got to do is a group of people is come together so we can reach out to them to convince ODNR to be more aggressive and give us some applications to get our lake back. So what we're trying to do here tonight is at least understand where we've started. We have got traction to get the chemical introduced. We're here, we've listened to so many people that would like to see our lake back, and there's only one way to do it. This is one. If anybody else can come up with any idea, because this is what I've learned. If you're going to harvest, every time you harvest, every time you go through milfoil with a prop, it shaves off a leaf, it goes to the bottom, it grows roots. The tonnage per acre only gets thicker. You cannot harvest your way out of this, and there's nobody that will suggest that you can, that knows what they're doing. I'm explaining to you, if anybody can find a way to do this, but it's not there. So treatment is the only way to do it. Priscillachord is the chemical that is designed specifically for that plant. And as they start to address this with these kind of treatments, they're going to want to come back and what they'll do is be able to step it back, suppress it. The hard part about where we're at is with ODNR is when they saw milfoil in our lake, to understand this is like cancer on the arm. Okay, you don't wait to see how far it spreads before you start to suppress it. You suppress it. Any lake that has a maintenance program that's going to keep their milfoil down after they suppress and get it back, they do a spotting program every year to make sure it does not grow out of control again. That's what should have been done from the get-go. We're here tonight to understand that a group of people can make a difference, because so far it wasn't our other organizations that got these things done. It was individuals from out of those organizations working with state reps and our legislation. If we want a year back for next year, we've got to look at what we need to understand to reach out to those state reps, our governor, Mary at ODNR, and make sure she knows we're behind getting our lake back and how we want this to happen. I've spent a lot of time with these men every week talking about other possibilities and things that we want to look forward to doing. And one of them, we not only want to get our weed problem fixed, we want to be able to work on getting a dredging program in place. Now, I was talking to John Cross yesterday. He was going to be here. He had a previous obligation, could not make it. He will be at additional or further meetings in the future. But he's very supportive, and everybody here to understand that John has been the person that with ODNR has given us the door to get to have conversations. So I want everybody to understand he's our champion in this community for what our legislators do. We've had a number of people that have done things outside of the programs, and I'd like to introduce one of those people here right now, Tony Canale, and let him explain to you. He brought Dr. Jones here to the community, and I'm going to have him explain what he did. And she is one of the news sources of information. Watershed has hired her to be an advisor to put a program together. She's part of the program. I'm going to let Tony explain it, and you'll hear another individual that stepped up and did things that now are starting to make differences.
Good evening, everyone. Hey, my name's Tony Canale. Just got a little statement here that I prepared. So I've been coming to the lake since I was a child. My wife and I purchased a property on the north side of the lake about 15 years ago. So again, this is a statement solely on my behalf. I'd prefer not to answer any questions because I'm not the professional here. But anyhow, I picked up my boat early in April of this year, and bringing my boat back to my dock, I knew that we had a significant problem concerning the weeds this year. A few years prior to this, I noticed significant difference in the water clarity in the weeds at my dock. I was told by professionals that work the lake that it was attributed to the zebra mussels that found their way to Indian Lake. I've never seen such clarity for 15 years, and even as a child coming to the lake. The state of Ohio attributes the clarity of the waters to the watershed program, and I referenced that out of their question and answer thing they have online. But I'm not sure what the watershed did for the last 3 to 5 years to make this clear. In my mind, it's more the zebra mussels. So anyhow, I started researching zebra mussels and lake weeds and stumbled across a study done by this group out of Michigan called Restorative Lake Science. This was posted on one of the Indian Lake websites. I'm not sure which one it was, and I'm not sure who the person was that posted it, but they're the ones that are ultimately responsible for me contacting Restorative Lake Science. I've had a business all my life. I've called people just on the cold call, and I've heard no a lot, so I was expecting a no, but she was perceptive. So anyways, the study that I read, it was on a lake called Paradise Lake in Michigan, and the characteristics and the similarities to our lake's problems with the invasive species were very similar. You can find this study posted online or on their website. So after reading as much as I could on zebra mussels and invasive aquatic plants, I took it upon myself to contact the Ohio Department of Natural Resources in or around late April, early May, to see if they had any type of plan in place to combat the weeds and also to get rid of the zebra mussels. Unfortunately, I was basically told that they were working on it and they started a study. That was kind of the gist of the response. So really what motivated me to call and talk to Ohio Department of Natural Resources was the safety concerns that I had at the time. During my research, I'd read online that there was an incident where there were a lot of milfoil weeds growing. I believe it was maybe Minnesota, and there was a tuber that had got tangled up in these weeds and died or perished or came close to dying because of these weeds. So that was alarming for me. A neighbor of mine on the north side of the lake, they were water skiing last year, and he had his kids out, and one of the kids fell off the skis. The ski went down, and they could never find the ski. It got entangled in the weeds, and they never found that ski. So, with that in mind, and what I've seen early in the spring, I just thought, what are we doing? How are we going to combat this? So backing up, you know, from what Bud said earlier, I'd attended that first Indian Lake Advocacy group meeting at Cranberry's restaurant. And a lot of people had a lot of positive input. They're trying to fix our weed problem, but there really wasn't an answer to or a plan put in place. So after that meeting, I went back to my place, pulled up that study on Paradise Lake, found Dr. Jones's phone number. It was posted right on the front page. I took it upon myself to call her. I told Dr. Jones I had read her study on Paradise Lake, and Indian Lake had a lot of the same similarities. I informed her she could research our lake through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources website, also Google searches, media searches. She could see videos, our drone videos. That was all posted online. And I asked her if she would come down and take a look at our lake and give us some evaluation so I could forward this to the state of Ohio, our Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Much to my surprise, she agreed to come down and take a look. She arrived on June 29th, and I took her and another marine biologist, along with 2 residents from the lake, on about a 5-hour tour. She brought along equipment to measure algae and oxygen, and also a rake to pull weeds from the lake bed. As we were leaving my dock, one of the things that stuck out most to me was this question she asked. She looked me right in the face and she said, "Why did we let the lake get this way? Why did the state not take a proactive approach 2 years ago?" And I didn't have an answer. I just told her, I don't know. I don't know why we're here. Then we proceeded to tour the lake. They took samples of weeds. They also measured algae and oxygen in several different spots of the lake. She had me read off my longitude, latitude numbers off my GPS so she could track where we took these samples. While we were out there, we also observed the harvesters working, and she informed me that we were harvesting the wrong weeds. She also contacted somebody from Aqueduct and spoke to them about a weed bed that we came upon. I was pretty amazed by this. She observed these weeds and said that someone had treated these weeds, but they didn't treat them the right way, so it didn't take effect to the herbicide. So she was able to contact Aqueduct while she was on my boat, and they consulted about that. So I asked her, as we moved on, if she had heard of a company called SE Pro, because I'd learned about this company about a week prior to her showing up. And she informed me that she knew of them, and apparently from being in the same business as studying lakes and so on. She also informed me at that time that she did not apply aquatic herbicides and she did not sell them because she didn't want a conflict of interest. Whenever she needed that done after one of her studies, she subcontracted that out to other herbicide applicators. So we stopped and had lunch at Cranberry's, and then we proceeded back to the north side of the lake where they concluded the tour. A few weeks after the 29th, she sent me an evaluation of Indian Lake and a professional management opinion that I forwarded to the governor's office and also the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. At that time, I informed her at that time that Ohio Department of Natural Resources had decided to use Crucilicor in a test area of the lake. So this was probably 3 weeks after her study when we were talking about this. And part of her response was, "I fully support experimental treatments, and I'm also confident in Crucilicor's success." So apparently she must have dealt with this herbicide in the past. So I was curious about her though, while we were on the boat. So on the way back, I spoke to her about what her motivation was in becoming an aquatic biologist. And she told me as a child, her dad would take her fishing at some lake that they lived in Michigan, and she found an interest in frogs and turtles. So I believe this was installed in her childhood to become, a biologist. So anyways, in conclusion, she can be reached through her website, Restorative Lake Science. She's very perceptive to answering any questions and keeping the community involved and informed. Thanks a lot, guys.
There's a lot we've learned in the last 90 days, and some of the things I might point out for a moment. One of the things that was very disturbing to me when I was at the watershed meeting is when I saw Aqueduct's representative go up to and talk about spraying channels for the residents. Then he went back, and a few minutes later they asked for the state scientist who represented us to get our lake fixed. And the same person that was spraying the channels and this business that was getting very lucrative was being asked to fix this problem. We used the word conflict, and I can't believe that arrangement was even started. People need to understand this. When I sat with Aqueduct the day with ODNR, and I started talking about Priscilla Court, they had no intention of spraying, no thoughts of doing it for a year or two or more, had no interest. There's no other applicator that would fix a lake that would not start to suppress within weeks. Most applicators can come in and do an assessment in 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks at most and get a program started. And the state has asked them to do a 6-month study that I don't know where it was going to go, but there was no initiative to get a proactive approach on fixing our lake. That's very important. I think it's important the public knows this, because I talked to Chief Cobb one day when the governor was down and said, why do we have Aqueduct? And he said they're the only ones that reached out to get the contract. They were the only ones that applied. They've been here for 3 years watching this weed problem grow out of control. When anybody, like Dr. Jones would say, who would let a lake get like this? Well, the state of Ohio is in over their head, did not understand the weeds, and there's no way it's going to get fixed without treating this lake. So we need to understand the public. If we want our lake back, we have to get behind this. The science, I like what James said. If you see some of the pictures of me out in the boat with one of the tests, after they did the test, I went out 3 times with the C-Pro people. And one of the people in the boat was Mark Heilman. Mark Heilman is the person that got the President's Award last year for his dedication and accomplishments in the aquatic weed maintenance programs in that society nationally. On the other hand, we got Aqueduct, who has a young fellow that every time he talks about slowing down, getting the lake fixed, instead of doing something to work in the direction to get it done. It makes no sense. I just thought I'd share that. People need to know that. We need to be aware of who the state has hired, why they've hired people, who we can have confidence in, and I believe this is part of the problem we've got. They checked off the box. Tonight, we'd just like to impress on everybody to get behind this and reach out. We got a list on the website of the people that we need to reach out to, get letters started, encourage your neighbors, encourage your neighborhood, get everybody involved you can. Let's get as much traction as we can. Right now, here's where we're at. They could spray some more this year if they work quick enough. My goal in June was to see that 1,750 acres got sprayed this year. When they did the test spot, we were hoping they were going to do another 1,500 this year. And what that would do is give us that reduced biomass that in the spring when they went in and they got in early and went and sprayed the rest of the weeds, we could get most of our lake back next year. We can still do that. But the community's got to get behind and encourage the state to do this. These people like Mark Heilman, or I've met Shaner. Mike Shaner is their field tech person, the most knowledgeable person in the country on milfoil and Priscilla Court. He's been here several times looking at our lake and willing to help us talk to our state people, and they're not willing to talk to the guy that got the award from the president. figure that one out. That's scary. I'm going to get ready to close here. I want to thank everybody for being here. If you have any questions as far as what we can do to get on the site, what we're hoping for is to get so we can post them, so we can share them, so others can look and learn from each other's questions. So please help us with that. Anybody wants to get involved, please reach out to us. Any way that you could be helpful, any ideas are appreciated. We have several copies of a petition out here, and one of the things John Cross said, if we want to get this done, we need to get petitions going. We would like to get one online, and what we're looking for is if anybody grabs a copy of it or gets a copy, takes it to your neighborhood, takes it around, get your area covered, bring more back in, let's get this done. Let's show the state, the governor, that we want this to happen. I've been working with Mitch a little bit, and I appreciate his contributions. I'm going to give you the mic. I also want you to share with him. Mitch has helped me reach out to a set of lobbyists, and I've actually suggested that I'd pay the bill on this one, and I am. So but anyway, we've got some lobbyists working. I've got another group that we're talking to see how they might help us. But we've got people working with our legislators in different directions. So this is where the pressure needs to be, and every letter just adds to that support. When I was on the phone a few weeks ago in a conference call with ODNR, I've got a meeting on the 12th with Mary Mertz in the group again, and was a few weeks back, and Mary had mentioned about the letters and the calls she's getting, and those do make a difference. So I think if she likes calls and letters, I think we can show them what they're like.
I would echo that. Again, we have to dissuade the state that they're doing a wonderful job and everything's fine, because we all know it's not. And the more contact and pressure we can put on them, the better. Our lobbyists reported back to me that the governor is not going to direct Mary Mertz, the director at ODNR, to do anything. That's her job. And from a governmental standpoint, I understand that. So to me, we need to focus on ODNR and our legislators who can lean on them, and potentially we would come up with some legislation that would encourage the state to move forward and budget appropriately. But again, that's not a quick fix. So right now, we need to put the pressure on the Department of Natural Resources to get this thing moving.
I don't know if you've seen the video Ben did, Ben Presley. I want you to say a few words and see how you see this at this time, what you feel.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Ben Pefferly. My family have been users of the lake since, as near as we can figure, the late 1890s, when my grandfather and his parents owned, and his family owned Bell Fountain Island, and then they moved to Orchard Island in 1920, and frankly, my grandkids now are the 5th generation users. So my love for the lake and my desire to fix it correctly runs very deep. I also come from this from a different perspective too, and I mentioned it in my earlier interview, but professionally I was an environmental lawyer. I'm retired now. I'm not soliciting business, but I've been involved in literally hundreds of environmental remediation projects across the country. This problem is not a complex problem. It is a big problem, and that is very good news. And to reinforce the PowerPoint slide, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The science is settled. It's a simple 3-prong attack on the weeds, and it needs to be implemented. And I do want to echo something that my colleague Mitch said also. As we write our letters to ODNR, they are people. Remember that. There's a lot of anger amongst all of us. Don't direct anger to them personally. That will backfire. Just create a positive, say, hey, we don't know who was responsible for in the past. You're the new people in the future, and you have the opportunity to fix this and to be the heroes, but we really need you to act quickly. And that's the message I would use as all of us write and continue to rewrite our letters, because it does work. It is effective. I don't know, is there anything else you want me to say, Bud?
You tell me.
That's good enough for me, and I'm not, and the best news is I'm not soliciting business.